Parent Entrepreneur Power, conversation number 169.
Parent Entrepreneur Power.
Wait, what? Entrepreneur Power!
This is the podcast for parents juggling the tough choices required for success in business while putting family first. Hi, I'm Mary Catherine Johnson, and I share the ups and downs and dirty truths of profits and potty training while chatting with successful parent entrepreneurs from all walks of life. Are you powered up? Hey there, Power Parents. You know who I am, Mary Catherine Johnson, and today I get to speak with a pretty amazing person I was introduced to via Susan Pierce Thompson that you've heard recently on the podcast. But today we get to talk to Ocean Robbins, and he is the co-founder and CEO of the Food Revolution Network. Hey there, Ocean. How you doing?
I'm thrilled to be with you.
Oh, thank you. Likewise, definitely thrilled. So, all right, we always start our conversations with your once upon a time story, which means tell us how you got into this whole parenting and entrepreneur gig. Which came first, the kids or the business?
The mission feels like it started when I was about 7 years old because I've been passionate about making the biggest possible contribution that I could to building a better world since a very young age. Actually, even maybe before I was born, because my grandfather founded an ice cream company. It was called Baskin Robbins. And
I think I heard of that, yes.
You may have. My dad, John, grew up with an ice cream cone-shaped swimming pool and 31 flavors of ice cream in the freezer. He was groomed to one day join in running the family company. But in his early 20s, he was offered that chance, and he said no. And he walked away from huge fame and fortune and a path that was practically paved with gold and ice cream to, as we jokingly say in our family, follow his own rocky road. He went on to become a best-selling author, writing about food and health and how we could make our food choices into a stand for the health and the lives we wanted. And the media called him the rebel without a cone. You know, here he was. This ice cream.
On. My kids are going to love you. They're going to be listening to this going, man, there's puns all over the place.
Yes, there are. And in time, my dad's work inspired millions of people to look at their food choices as a chance to make a difference in the world. So at a young age, I was inspired by his example and by the difference he was making and by the power of food choices to harm or to heal. When it comes to what we eat, we literally hold our destiny in our hands. We shape our future with our knives and forks. And so I grew up seeing the impact of that as my dad's work was touching many, many lives. And I founded a nonprofit organization when I was 16 that I directed for 20 years that empowered young people to make food choices and life choices that were healthy for them, and also in time to build bridges across historic divides. So I work with leaders in over 65 countries, empowering young people to be agents of positive change. Wow. During the course of that time, I became a dad. And then when I was in my late 30s, I founded the Food Revolution Network, working directly with my dad, which is what I'm doing now. So that's kind of the long story, or the broad sweeps of it. I would say that I met the love of my life, Phoenix Robbins, when I was, she's Phoenix Robbins now, when I was 20 years old. And we've been together for 23 years, which has been an incredible miracle and blessing. And we became parents in the year 2001 with twins.
Wow.
And that has profoundly shaped my life and my work. And so now I get to do both. I get to be a dad with twins who are now 16 years old. And I get to be running the Food Revolution Network, which has reached many hundreds of thousands of people with a message of health and empowerment around food.
Oh my goodness. So definitely the business came first, and at least the entrepreneurial bug came first, and then the kids came second. But I'm sure you would agree that once the kids came along, the drive to impact your world just basically went into overdrive, I can imagine.
Well, initially, of course, especially with twins, we had a lot of focus on survival. Because, so I can't say that my world-changing ambitions were immediately accelerated. But in the long run, there have really been two ways that being a dad has shaped and deepened my commitment to positive impact on this planet. And one is, of course, I care a lot about the world my kids are growing up into, and I want them to have a safe future. And I'm horrified by, 1 in 3 of our kids is expected to get diabetes. 2/3 of our population is overweight or obese. A generation ago, 5% of our kids had a chronic health ailment. Today, it's 22%. The number of people who are living sick and suffering is just rising exponentially. And I want my kids to have health, and I want our society to be healthy. I think it's totally unsustainable that 19% of our gross domestic product in the United States is going to disease symptom management. We call it health care, but it's not caring for our health. It's managing symptoms of disease. Meanwhile, we're eating ourselves into suffering and misery. And so when I see this, I say, this threatens the future of our economy. Starbucks spends more money, vastly more, on health insurance than it does on coffee. Ford Motor Company spends more on health insurance than it does on, actual hard materials for their cars. So we have a crisis, in a sense, economically as a nation, and also at a very human level. So many people are suffering, and we don't realize that we're fueling that suffering with the food we eat. The National Institute of Health Metrics conducted an extensive study, and they found that the American diet caused 672,000 deaths last year.
Yeah, I can't even, I just, I am right there with you. I absolutely am right there with you, because so few people, it's basically a mindfulness. I look at it as a mindfulness. Be present with what you're doing. Be present with what you're putting in your mouth. Be present with where you get your food and what is in your food. And you will change your life just with being present. Because if you read the label, if people, not you obviously, but many people out there living in the middle aisles of our grocery stores, which are all the packaged foods, the people who are living in those aisles aren't even reading those ingredients and those labels. And if they just did, and they realized they couldn't even pronounce half of it, hopefully, if they were mindful of what that was doing to their bodies, they would really make a different choice. So let me ask you this. So you obviously are very passionate about what you do. And as I say, I agree 100%. And I have definitely joined the revolution. So as a dad and an entrepreneur and having this passion, how in the world do you get up every day and be a husband, be a father to twins, be leading a revolution and caring so much about our planet, our species, and everything around us, and get it all done? How in the world can you do that?
Well, I mean, I think time management is one of the great arts that every human being faces, but every parent faces doubly and every entrepreneur faces triply. So put it all together and we got our hands full. But number one, I don't waste time saying I don't have enough time. Because that's a story that we tell ourselves, and it creates an attitude of lack and inadequacy and insufficiency. And it actually saps energy and capacity. So I'm more interested in working with what I've got. I've got the same 24 hours in the day that every other human being has. And I'm responsible for what I do with it. So I have to make very conscious choices. There's an old time management fable of sorts where there's this guy on stage and he's got a big bucket and he fills it with big rocks. There's about 6 of them that fit in there. And then he fills in some smaller rocks, and maybe 20 or 30 fit in around the big ones. And then he puts in some sand, and he's like, looks pretty full, right? He's like, yeah. And then he adds water. And then he says, what's the lesson here? And someone says, oh, it's that you can fit a lot more in a bucket than you realize. And he says, no, actually, the lesson here is that if I didn't put the big rocks in first, they never would have gotten in there.
Right.
Right? And so we have to always decide, what are our big rocks? What are our musts? What is our life about? What are you doing it for?
Right.
You know? And I decided a long time ago, I realized that, you know, if I didn't have healthy, positive relationships with my kids and with my beloved and with my friends and with the people that are important to me and with my own self and my own growth and my own vitality and aliveness and health, then the work that I was doing would not be sustainable, would not be fulfilling, and ultimately would be built kind of, it's like building a house on landfill.
Right.
You need solid ground. You need a foundation for your life. And for me, my relationships, the people that I'm with every day, the people that I'm most intimately connected to, I mean, that's the foundation that I build on.
Right.
And so, as well as my own health and well-being. And so I had to look at, well, how do I build this solid, you know, the big rocks around that? And so for me, part of how I organize my life is I work hard and long hours, but I also I play hard too, or I play deep. So I take time offline. I take probably 5 weeks a year of vacation. Much of it fairly unplugged, or maybe I'll do an hour or two of emails because I do my company and I'm not going to let it crash and burn. But I draw sharp boundaries there, and I take my kids on trips, and my wife and I go to Hot Springs Retreat, or we just take a couple days ourselves. We started taking date nights. My parents gave me, I think, the greatest gift I've ever received in my life monetarily when we were 1 year into parenthood. They paid for childcare so that we could have a date night. At first it was a month, and then eventually we had them more frequently, where we just have an overnight together. And the first few times we literally just slept 10 or 12 hours, you know? Then we woke up and looked at each other and it was like, oh, I remember you.
Yeah. And then probably worried about the twins the rest of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, we did. We talked about the twins the whole time. But you know what? Like, that was so good. And my dad said, this is a lot cheaper than divorce.
Yes.
Like, it's even cheaper than marriage counseling.
Yes.
You know? And it's a lot, and I was like, and it's a lot more fun too.
Yes, definitely.
So I think for every parent, I say, supporting date times is such a priority. And if you're a grandparent, support your kids having date times.
Yes, please, definitely.
Because this is just a strategic investment. Because this is the relationship that it all grows out of, right?
Yes, it does.
And then similarly with the kids, it's like just having quality time. And it's so tempting when I'm with my kids and my mind's buzzing with work to be checking my emails every 5 minutes or every half hour. And I will admit I do that sometimes, but my kids are pretty hard line about that. They're like, you're supposed to be with us right now.
Well, enjoy that, because it won't last much longer. I'm trying.
Yes,
sorry to tell you. I have an 18-year-old.
I hear those tales. Yes, I do. I definitely hear those tales. So I think that we experience that I experienced what it means to be somewhere fully. Like, wherever I am, that's where I want to be.
Yes.
So when I'm at work, I don't want to be stressing about my kids. And when I'm at home, I don't want to be stressing about work. I want to be fully present in each moment.
Exactly.
And if I'm with my beloved and we're in each other's arms waking up in the morning, that's where I want to be, not thinking about the email I have to send, right? Mm-hmm. So the question is, how can we be fully where we are in any given moment to truly be here now, right?
Yes.
And that also means that we aren't wasting energy wishing that we had done something we didn't.
Right.
So, you know what? If you don't make conscious choices, some of us live in what's called triage mode, right? Mm-hmm. It's like triage literally in war means someone's going to die and you're just trying to have it be the least casualties possible, right? Mm-hmm. But you recognize that there's going to be some people that die, and that's a horrible metaphor. Right. But a lot of people feel like they're living to some extent in triage mode, where it's like they're not showing up with their best everywhere. They're not meeting all their deadlines. They're not fully accountable to everybody everywhere in their life. And so it's like, well, what's the least costly place to not succeed, right? And I want to reframe that for listeners right now, that sometimes it is brilliant to get an A+ and knowing when a B- is adequate. And
okay, so repeat that. Sometimes it's okay to get an A+ when a B- is adequate.
No, let me say that again.
Okay.
sure it's clear. I want to get an A plus in the art of knowing when a B minus will suffice.
Got it. Okay.
So this is about time management. This is about delegation of tasks within your own life and prioritization.
Right.
So the art is to do the stuff that is the most important and that will liberate the most energy and that will add the most value to your ultimate life outcomes, and to make that your highest priority.
So
Right?
break that
In
down
work
for
and
me.
life.
Yes. So break that down for me in your life. So how do you do that? So you wake up in the morning and you have to determine what priorities are where. And obviously I know food is going to be one of the number ones, and
It is.
and movement and mindfulness and all the, I mean, do you meditate?
Sure.
Do you weigh out your food? I mean, you don't have to get too detailed, but at least give me an idea.
I can get as detailed as we want. I'll go into a couple areas here. So number one, I own a bike, and I bike whenever I have local transportation and I'm not taking my kids. I bike somewhere. It's a great way to get exercise and then build it in without wasting. It doesn't take a lot of extra time.
Right.
I have social networks where I work out with my dad at the gym twice a week. And because it's a nice routine and it's also a way for us to hang out together, we kind of build that into our lives, and it keeps me, between that and biking, I've got a fairly regular amount of exercise that's kind of built into my life. Around food, I often will prepare, while I'm hanging out with my kids in the evening, I will prepare food for the next day. Specifically my own breakfast and lunch, for example. And then when I go off to work, I'll have that all packed up and I just take it with me, and then I know I'm going to eat well at my desk. Or sometimes my wife or my mom will also make food for me, which is an incredible privilege I have that not everyone does. But, you know, on days when they're around and available for that, I receive it with enthusiasm. And my mom and my dad live in the same house on the same property as we do, and my office is in their home. So I commute 100 yards to work every day, and I often carry my lunch up with me, or sometimes my mom brings it down to me. It's a very sweet situation.
Oh, how wonderful.
So creating structures, the point is try to create structures that support you, right?
Right.
These are the ones that work for me. In the morning when I wake up, my wife and I will snuggle and share some time together, and we always include in that 5 minutes of daily practice. Now, why 5 minutes? You might say that's pathetically low. I'll tell you what, though, the difference between 5 minutes and nothing is quite significant.
Yes.
And so we take a week at a time where one of us chooses what the daily practice is going to be, and we keep alternating. And so one week it's chanting together, another week it might be meditating, another week it might be a breathing practice, another week it might be some exercise of each telling each other things we appreciate each other back and forth. But we just take that sacred time where it's just the two of us, and we actually set a timer so that we don't have to worry about how long it's going. And we're just going to do it to the end, and then we'll wrap up. And that's been a really sweet practice we've been cultivating recently.
How wonderful.
And then I get up into the day, and I kind of make it an intention not to check emails until I'm fully out of bed and getting dressed.
Oh, that's a very good thing.
And, but then I will admit upon occasion, I'm still brushing my teeth while I'm checking them on my phone. But, being an entrepreneur with employees all over the world, I kind of need to check in. Sometimes there's an urgent thing going on, but if it's not crisis, I just say, okay, fine. I scan the terrain and I'm not doing anything about it,
Right.
A few times I've been known to sit in my underwear and dive into crisis management for 3 hours straight, but
Well, as long as
with my teeth still in mouth, but
as long as you stay there in your room, in your bathroom, you're good.
Yes. But most of the time I'm dressed and up at my office by the time I get to serious work. And then while I'm working, I'm really focused, and occasionally I'll take a little break and step outside and just enjoy the sunshine for a few minutes. I love the fact that I have the ability to really concentrate. And if I know I'm going to need to work in the evening, I check in with my family and let them know. Sometimes I do need to work evenings. But I have a weekly Papa-Son time every Saturday. I have 4 hours with my kids, and we just play together. And it's not a time for doing dishes or cooking unless we're making something together, and that's our activity.
Right.
But, we might go to the movies, we might go to the park, we might go for a hike, we might just hang out and tell stories and chat, but it's just time to be together. And, 4 hours a week isn't a lot, at one level, but to have quality time with your kids where you're not focused on doing things, you're just focused on
Yes.
being together, it's actually really special. So we always look forward to that
How wonderful.
very much. And so those are a few of the kind of baseline things that I build in. And then and then I have a date night with my wife. Now we have a date night once a week from 6 p.m. until 10 a.m. the next morning. It's just us. And sometimes we go away somewhere or go to a friend's space, where our friends are away, or sometimes we get the kids out of the house and have the house to ourselves. But whatever it is, we just build that into our lives. And so some of those basic rituals help to create a container for wellness.
Definitely.
And then we shop well, and we surround ourselves with good food, and we cook in large quantities so that we have extras of good foods to eat during the week. Make a big pot of beans we soak them for a couple of days first to get all the sort of toxins out of the beans, and then we cook them really well, and then we have them, and we'll add them, and maybe a big pot of rice, and then that's in the fridge, and then we can easily have beans and rice in different combinations, and then we have a lot of vegetables, and we can steam them anytime. And so it's just, we make it kind of easy for ourselves to whip up a meal in, say, 20 minutes or less for the whole family in the evening. So if I get home from work at 6:30 and my kids are hungry and everyone's kind of cranky, it's like, let's just get this going, and we're eating by 7 or 7:30. And that's a nice way to structure it. And then in terms of my work life, there's a lot to be said for prioritization. And so I've used much more fancy systems, but to be honest with you, right now, I take a pen and paper and I write top things I want to get done today, and then I cross them out as I go. Mm-hmm. And every day, and they may not be everything I want to do, but they're the things that I feel will be the most significant. And there's usually a thing or two that are taking mental energy, like I'm stressed about them or I'm worried about them. And I find that when I do those things, everything else goes better because my energy is liberated and moving. So I try to focus on getting the big rocks in first, the big things done. And that's kind of how it flows for me. Of course, being a manager, I have a lot of team members who need things from me. So I always try to prioritize helping them have what they need to succeed first, because I don't want to be paying people to spin their wheels,
Exactly.
But I've got a great team. And at this point, one of our arts has been, and I'm sure listeners that are at all different levels in their business lives. But let me just say that we have a project manager on our team who helps to kind of coordinate the flows of everybody else on the team and all the timelines and deliverables. And it's just taken me out of that role of coordinating everything, and enables me to play my role better. And they actually help manage me, right? Like they give me timelines and tasks, and I'm able to stay more in the creative space and less in the crisis response mode. And that's been a real breakthrough for me.
Wow. Fantastic. So it really, in a nutshell, taking care of yourself is really no different than taking care of your business. You need to prioritize. You need to create systems. You need to follow a structure. And all of those things will allow your life to be more healthy, your body, your world, your relationships, and your business to be more healthy.
That's exactly right.
Okay, I think we've got it. So power parents, that's what we call ourselves, because I'm sure you would agree with this. Once you've become a parent and you've gotten a kid through potty training, you can pretty much do anything, right?
Oh my God, I have with twins.
Yes.
Our kids were kind of late bloomers in a few ways, and so I have changed my share of diapers. Let's just leave it at that. And I've also scrubbed my share of soiled pants.
Yes.
And it's some of those memories never leave you.
They don't. So imagine you have to make a choice. You've got a child who is both soiled and their clothing is soiled, and it's all up their back and so you have to figure out how in the world are you going to coordinate. In your case, you probably have two of them at a time, and so you have to try and figure out how in the world am I going to.
It's quite literal, and sometimes you just and then you got to handle them with love.
Yes. And not
Even
anxiety.
And if you're
anger.
Annoyed and frustrated, you gotta. It's if you handle them with, and convey that frustration, then of course you're creating guilt and shame and hurt feelings on their part, and it's not going to help the
No, it's
goal.
going to make it worse.
If the ultimate goal is to help them be empowered, sovereign human beings who make positive choices with their lives, then that's very different than if the ultimate goal is to train them to obey.
Exactly.
And in my parenting philosophy, I'm much more interested in helping my children to be who they are fully and to be capable of making wise choices than I am interested in making them do what I think they should do. That is quite an art form.
It is. It is. And, I'm sure you weren't just born that way. I'm sure you've had to make a few mistakes along the way, like all the rest of us have. And realizing when you get that anger back in your face, like, oh, I think that one wasn't so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to probably want to do that differently next time.
Right.
That's life. But if you have done that, if you dive into parenting and you've tackled some of those issues, and you've created at least a successful human being, they're walking, talking, they can pretty much take care of themselves, then you've been a success. If you could do that, you can anything in business. You can have whatever.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the interesting things is that it's true. Parenting has definitely made me a stronger person. I think it's also made me a humbler person, because to be honest with you, there's a way that before I was a dad, what can I say? I thought I was here to help change the world for the better. I always felt that way growing up. And I used to kind of judge, when I saw kids acting out and I saw parents losing it, I'd kind of judge them.
Me too.
Judge the parents.
Yeah.
And then I found myself in situations, with twins, like our guys didn't sleep more than 2 hours at a time, either of them, for the first couple of years of their lives. So do the math on that.
Yeah.
Waking up every 2 hours, maybe 3 at the most per child.
Right.
2 of them. And my wife and I would each take a boy, and she would pump milk and we'd freeze it so we'd have extra. And that way she could nurse one boy whenever he woke up, and I could be in the next room with the other boy, and whenever he woke up, I would feed him with pumped milk in a bottle. Mm-hmm. And every 3 hours, but then the rooms were right next to each other, and they'd wake each other and wake us. So I didn't sleep more than 3 hours at a time maximum, usually an hour or two for a couple of years.
Yeah.
And you go through that while you're also trying to work full time.
Right.
And I often during the day, we actually worked from home, and we had our kids in our arms.
Right.
2 of them, we were each holding a baby in a snuggly or something while we're on the phone doing business calls.
Right.
And trying to be on the computer, and then sleeping, at best 6 hours in 4 chunks in a night.
Right.
And it wears on you.
Beyond that,
And I feel like I reached this place where I was just kind of going through the motions a little bit, but I also came to have so much compassion for, everything that people do out of desperation. And I realized, when you're not at your best, you can make mistakes, and sometimes those compound on each other.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad, those date nights honestly kind of saved us, I think, because it was just so common with young parents that they start snapping at each other.
Right.
And getting cranky. And, my wife and I before this had a policy that we would share everything with each other. That was our belief, was that total honesty and transparency was one of our values as a couple. And what I came to realize during these gruesome years was that sometimes it's actually kinder and more honest to not speak every stupid thought that goes through your head.
Exactly.
We have thoughts that are bitterness. They are an expression of hormones and neural pathways firing in the brain that are like a bad drug.
Yeah.
Like you are tripping on misery.
Yes.
And you don't want to speak that stuff. It's not what's in your heart. It's not what you really believe.
Right.
And yet I would be filled with resentment at whoever's closest to me because I'm in misery, right? And so learning how to work with that, learning how to be conscious with that, and then learning how to make the best possible choices in that situation is so powerful. So honestly, now I have moments when it's like, something, the website goes down at a moment of peak traffic and we have 50,000 people on our website and none of them can load the page. And, and I'm like, it's a crisis for sure. And there's also part of me that's like, yeah, you think this is going to faze me?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've been through like 2 consecutive sleepless nights while holding boys who are screaming for 3 hours straight while they're pooping all over themselves. And this is
And me.
Well, just a problem. We can fix it, right?
Yes, that's what I keep saying. Nobody's dying. We're not fighting a war. This is just a website. It's okay. Right? Oh, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, but that's it. You're so right, Ocean. You're so right, because it really does. I did the same thing. I judged it. I just feel so bad about the things I thought. I didn't go up to people, strangers, and tell them what I thought, but still, the thoughts manifest themselves in actions and attitudes. And I just feel so bad for the way I judged people before I knew, and now I know.
Yeah.
And now I realize that judgment was really a judgment of myself, not of the person. I have not walked their shoes. I have no idea what's going on in their life. And if I were faced with the same situation they're going through, who knows if I would have acted any better or differently. So yeah, I get that. And I just so appreciate you sharing these things with us, because it makes us realize, and many of the power parents out there realize they're not alone. I mean, they're dealing with these things too, and they may be having a full-time job plus twins plus trying to start up a business on the side, or all these things, money troubles and trying to start the business, or the business isn't going the way they want. And those same feelings, those same snapping attitudes come up, and they really are manifested in, at least in my situation, the way I was raised. They're kind of they're pathways that were formed when I was quite young. So we have to look at those and see how we can change them. And when we're in crisis situation, and like you said, triage mode, those come full right out. Boy, we can't stop them. There's no filter.
Yeah. So, here's an interesting thing. Like, a lot of us, I think, value mindfulness and presence, and the sense that we are going to respond the best we can to what life brings us, right?
Right.
And for anybody who's ever meditated or practiced yoga or been in therapy, like, we know the value of self-work, self-awareness, consciousness in shaping reality. My experience in parenting is that some of the really tough moments have elicited in me this deep sense that this is what it's all for. Like, that all the work you do on yourself, you don't do it just for the happy times. You do it so that you have something to stand on in the tough times. And a lot of people would look at religion the same way, like, the reason that you might need faith or religion isn't just for the days when everything goes right. It's like, what do you turn to, or how do you resource, or how do you recalibrate? How do you find yourself again when temptations are pulling you in the wrong direction, when your life is falling apart? Like, I know that the times that I have fallen on my knees and, cried out to God or a higher power have always been times of crisis, when someone I loved was on the edge of death, maybe, or when something, terribly painful was facing me. And at those moments, we realize how humble we are, and we will turn to anything that might help. And we let go of thinking, the hubris of thinking that we can do it all by ourselves. And there's this kind of myth in our times, I think, that we aspire to be the Lone Ranger, to be independent, to be a superhero, to be a provider, to take care of everybody else. And there are moments when we realize how human we are and how dependent we are on other people. And the truth is, it's the reality all the time. Like, every meal you take, there were farmers that grew that food, and sun and soil and resources involved. And, right now, as you're listening to this, you are breathing air that is circulated through, that came from trees and plants, and that is circulated through the lungs of countless creatures throughout the world. So we're interconnected in ways we rarely realize. But sometimes it's at those breakdown and crisis moments when we are faced deeply and intimately with our vulnerability, with our humanity, and with our humility. And when we face that, I think we can be deepened. We can be wiser in the true sense, which is to know our place in things more accurately. And that place is at once very small because it's a vast world, and there are more than 7 billion people on this planet, and we are tiny little specks of dust in the cosmos. Mm-hmm. At the same time, to our children, it is very, very large, right?
Right.
And what we do is of profound import. And so I want to honor the significance of what we are and what we do, and also how dependent we are, how vulnerable we are, and how important it is to be able to ask for help. I think every parent at some point or the other is desperately grateful when someone comes and plays with their kid and gives them a chance to take a shower or grab a bite of food or just get a breather or take a nap. And so, we realize then the value of reciprocity, the value of relationships, whether it's your immediate family or friends or loved ones. We all need to be part of a community. We thrive best when we don't try to do it alone. And I think that's one of the gifts of parenting, is that it also bonds us not just to our peers, but also to the next generation. When our kids play with each other, at least for me, whenever I would get my kids with other kids, there's this relaxation, like, oh, they're not dependent on me. They're tribe now, right? They're fine. Right.
Right.
And so that's why so many parents love to go to the park.
Yes.
To just play with whoever's there, right? And then, of course, in time, for many parents, there's school and social activities, and it's just this wonderful feeling that the kids are part of something greater. So I think for me, I'm just continually reminded of the power of community and the webs of relationships that we are part of.
And that leads right into really my last question for you, because I know we have only a certain amount of time together, but I really want to get this message out to the power parents. And that is, you are leading a revolution. How can we participate?
Well, the food revolution is a central focus for me. And let me say that how you nourish your body and how you nourish your family is profoundly significant. We live in a society in which our food is laced with hormones, antibiotics, added sugars, toxic food-like substances, chemicals, flavorings, additives, in which our meat is mostly produced in factory farms with animals that are fed genetically modified crops that are inundated with pesticides, and animals that are treated with tremendous cruelty. And we live in a society in which most of our food is grown by farm workers who have a life expectancy of 49 years, and who are dying of cancer in droves because they are handling the pesticides daily in the fields that are being sprayed on the foods we're eating. We have a food system that has become in so many ways toxic to us, to animals, to farmers, to our planet. And in that context, eating real food is revolutionary.
Right.
And
that sad?
And it's really tough as a parent because, of course, you interact with the toxic food culture and your kids at birthday parties and at school lunches and at their friends' houses and going out to meals with friends. They're going to be exposed to food that, quite frankly, if you were to design a diet to fuel heart disease and cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's, you'd be hard-pressed to do better than the standard American diet.
Right. We've done that. Yes, our culture has actually produced that.
It has, and we're paying a devastating price for it, with our lives, with our health, with our well-being, with our vitality, and we don't want to put our kids on a track to that life, and that death. And yet it's hard to navigate. So by the same token, though, when you do, because we're social creatures, because we're in a community, when you do stand as a food revolutionary in your home and with your family, you also send out ripples that make it easier for other people to do the right thing.
Right.
And so, if your kid's going to a birthday party and there's going to be a cake, you could request that the cake be something that doesn't have sugar, or maybe request that they do something else instead of a cake, to serve real food. You could request that the appetizers be hummus and carrot sticks and celery, rather than some kind of junk food, rather than Doritos.
Right.
You can serve food that's healthy. You can send your kids off with lunch. You can give them their own food to take instead of whatever's being served somewhere. You can plan ahead. You can get a carpool going, but you can also get a food pool going where parents get together. And you can do this in the workplace too, by the way, and get kind of a co-op where one day a week somebody is responsible for the food for another 5 people. And one person takes on Monday, another person takes on Tuesday, and so forth. And you pool together and you make lunches for each other. And these kinds of tools can help kids to have healthy food and also share the load and the work of it if you can find peers to join with you. So I think that when we take a stand for a healthy food future for ourselves and our families, we don't do so in isolation. We actually help to shift the culture in a positive direction. And cultural change can happen remarkably fast as individuals become trailblazers for new, and actually not so new, but new to our times, ways of eating and living that are more congruent with our highest well-being. So you can be a food revolutionary by looking at where you shop, what you buy, how you prepare food, how you eat food, and helping to make it all more congruent with what you actually want for your life and your family. Broadly speaking, the food revolution to me is about moving away from processed junk and moving towards real food. It's about eating less factory farmed animal products, less added sugars, less processed junks, and more real, whole, natural foods, more food that grows as plants and less food that was manufactured in plants. And as we take these steps, eating more vegetables, more whole fruits, more legumes and whole grains, more nuts and seeds. If you're going to eat meat, make it pasture raised or wild. And as we move in this direction, we see radical benefits in our energy level, our vitality, our optimal weight function, our metabolism, our brain function, mental clarity goes up. You get deeper sleep. You have more energy through the day. And all of this is helpful to parents, by the way.
Sleep, yes.
Yes, and you also and it also prolongs your life. So it's adding not just years to your life, but also life to your years.
Yes.
And I think that's such a beautiful thing. And I love that we can be food revolutionaries and take a stand with our lives and make such a difference in the world all at the same time.
Thank you so much, Ocean. Okay, Power Parents, you've heard so many people on this show talk about that exact same thing. You've heard Ocean, you've heard Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, you've heard Unblind My Mind, you've heard 100 Days of Real Food, The Leaks. You've heard so many people on this program. You've heard me talk to you quite often about eating real food, moving, just doing the things that are naturally beneficial to our bodies, our minds, our environments, our families, and our planet. And now you have heard a wonderful, wonderful person talk about the same thing. And we will have links to everything that Ocean just talked about and to his food revolution and how you can become a revolutionary as well. And, Ocean, is there just one last piece of advice you'd give someone? Let's say they're a parent who wants to build a business, but they're trying to do all the wonderful time hacking that you had just talked about, but it's just kind of tough. What little motivation do you think you could give them?
Well, I would say, again, time management, put the big rocks in first. So you take the time to really be present where you are, right? Be with your kids and be with them. Even if, like I said, I have a 5-minute daily practice with my wife. It doesn't have to necessarily be a huge amount of time, but I have a friend who has a sign above her kitchen sink. It says, "The dishes can wait, play with your kids."
Definitely.
And sometimes we get so into doing the right thing and working so hard that we actually lose the ability to actually show up for the precious moments. So it doesn't have to absorb your whole life, but make sure that you have some time every week to just really be with your kids, not just to change diapers or feed them or dress them or do the dishes or help them with their homework or whatever it might be, but just to actually just play with them, meet them, love them, do something that's fun, that makes you smile, that lifts you up. Know that that the things that bring you joy, when you're fully alive, that's part of what they need, right? They need to see you alive. And then in terms of your work and how that balances, I mean, know that your work is on behalf of your family. You know, I'll say about 5 years ago, my family had a terrible financial blow. I guess it was actually more like 7 years ago in the financial crisis. And we lost most of our life savings overnight. You know, that's part of what fueled me after directing a nonprofit organization for 20 years and doing work that I love, but that wasn't earning any great sum of money, to start my own for-profit company where I knew that there was the potential to earn more. And partly I wanted to scale up because I felt that in the nonprofit sector, programs were dependent on fundraising. And you could do the most amazing programs in the world, but if you didn't raise the money for it, you wouldn't go forward. And similarly, you could do amazing fundraising, but if you're, you know, and your programs could stink, right?
Right.
And in fact, they were in competition with each other. And I wanted to design a business model where the more good we did, the more we could grow. And I think we've accomplished that with the Food Revolution Network, and we have more than 400,000 members. And I'm thrilled with this opportunity to really serve in a big way. But the motivation for it for me, centrally, to make that big leap from the nonprofit to the for-profit world was saying, hey, how am I going to take care of my kids long term?
Right.
Now that we don't have that little nest egg that we saved up, we've got to come up with something more. And I said, you know, I think this is a new possibility. And so sometimes financial stresses, as onerous as they can be, can also help to call us forward.
Definitely.
And if you're in entrepreneurship or interested in entrepreneurship, I mean, when you have a gift to give and you have a passion to serve, you know, that may be part of the gift of supporting a family is that maybe it brings you out more, makes you step up more. I think that you know, our kids just expect us to provide for them. They have no idea what it takes.
That's right.
And they tend to be mad at us for everything that goes wrong in their lives because at a certain level we're God to them. We literally made them, right?
That's right.
And
yes.
So to a certain level they expect us to make everything go okay, and they get mad at us when it doesn't.
Right.
And so part of the art, I think, of parenting and business is kind of rolling with the punches. You know,
Yes.
you just absorb what happens and you don't take it personally.
Oh man, boy, did I learn that lesson.
And then the question in every situation is, and what's the best I can do now?
Yes.
You know, if your sales revenues are down or things didn't go the way you wanted, okay, how do you learn from this? And what's the best you can do now? Beating yourself up is generally not advisable under any circumstances for any reason.
No.
You know,
It's
learning from reality is important. You know,
Right.
Sometimes you get new information that changes everything.
Right.
But that's different. That's totally different than you know, wasting energy beating yourself up either for the job you didn't get done or the work you didn't get done or the project you didn't complete or, you know, whatever else.
Didn't turn out well.
You're suffering or struggling.
Right.
So, you know, I think that the question is, what's the best we can do with what we got, right?
Perfect.
And that's our ability to answer that is part of what defines us as human beings. Sometimes your kids are really smart and brilliant and precocious. Sometimes they really struggle and they're the last in line.
Right.
They deserve all the love in your heart no matter what. And, you know, and they're not any less worthy of love if they're, whether they're first in class or last in class.
Right.
There's always going to be somebody who is, right?
Yep. That's right.
And your kids deserve all the love in the world with what they've gotten. The same is true for you.
Wow. Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing such wonderful stories, sharing this time. I so appreciate it. And we will all go and join the Food Revolution Network. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, Power Parents, I hope you loved that conversation with Ocean as much as I did. He obviously speaks my language. He obviously is preaching to the choir on this one because I believe wholeheartedly in the power of the food that we actually eat to create the life that we want to live. So with that in mind, there is a food revolution going on, and specifically there is a food revolution summit going on. One of my previous guests to this podcast, Dr. Susan Pierce Thompson, and you can hear my conversation with her at parententrepreneurssuccess.com/PEP165. She's actually the one who introduced me to Ocean, and you heard about his story and heard about what he and his father are doing. And I invite you to go to this summit. No, I am not an affiliate. I don't get any money from you visiting this summit because not only is it free, but even if you subscribe to or purchase anything else that Ocean might be offering after the summit, I still am not an affiliate. I really, truly believe that what we eat determines the life we live. So please join this summit to learn really what's going on. And it's not as you can tell from Ocean's conversation, we're not in this as conspiracy theorists and trying to bring down the government and all those kinds of things. We are here to help people live amazing lives. I hope you know that by now. And I hope you do join this summit. So if you'd like to, the direct link will be found at parententrepreneurssuccess.com/food. And you know where you can find the show notes, right? /PEP169. But join the revolution, please, my friends. It will change your life as it has done mine. And I only hope it extends it to the extent that I would love to stay around to see great grandkids if I possibly can. At least see my sons married or doing whatever it is they want to do with their lives past the age of 35. That would be fantastic. All right, my friends, you know what you need to do every single day. Enjoy the journey. To get powered up for your day, just go to parententrepreneur.power.com and listen to any one of the over 100 episodes we've had so far with amazing entrepreneurs just like you. It might just help you feel like a grown-up again.